What is up, everybody? Happy New Music Friday. I'm Kane from Dusty, Oregon, and welcome to my album reviews for the week of February 11th. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Everything helps. And you might have noticed I'm in a new sweater this week. My merch just came in. I'm super excited. All of the orders have been shipped out, so if you did pick up a sweater or a t-shirt, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, head over to dustyoregon.com to discover more great new music. I'm posting up there every single day. There is plenty of hidden gems out in the world to discover, and they're all up there. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into those album reviews. All right, so first up, we're going in a very weird direction. I've got New York experimental trio Kill Alters, their new album, Armed to the Teeth's LMMOM. This is their first full-length album. The group have been putting out a handful of singles and mini projects over the last few years, and of course, performing their wild experimental electronic sound for live audiences. Regardless, this new album is a wild collage of experimental, electronic, bit of horror, industrial, even archive tape samples. Now, of course, this isn't a genre that I'm typically drawn to, but there's something about Armed to the Teeth that just stood out for me that I just couldn't stay away from. And I think it's because Kill Alter's ability to balance melody and chaos together. And there's a lot of unpredictability on this record, which keeps you on your toes. Their choice uses of screams, synthesizers, filters, distortion, spoken word, tape cuts, and just this overall musical debauchery. But at the same time, Armed to the Teeth is still able to find these, centering, grounding moments of melody, either from underground experimental droning or off-center vocal melodies. And if you've ever seen the Netflix series Archive 81, I felt that Armed to the Teeth kind of embodies this sci-fi mysteriousness that merges the reality with this fever dream of old tapes and nightmarish psychedelics. And this comes from the fact that all of Kill Alter's music features bandleader Bonnie Baxter's mother's original tapes from her archive. It helps to sculpt this narrative that's driven by emotional memories and trauma as sounds and textures kind of clash for attention. And I felt that the whole album kind of plays through fluidly for the half hour. This is due in part to these select interludes of synthesizers and samples, creating this feeling of a stream of consciousness. And because of its well-executed artistry and experimentation, I am happy to give this album a 7.5 out of 10. And no spoilers, but this album did end much better than Archive 81 did. Just saying. The amount of music that Frank Turner has just spilled out over his career is quite admirable. He's now on to his 9th solo album, and this isn't even including all of his little side projects that he's done over the years. And he has returned to his punk roots somewhat on this album, FTHC, which stands for Frank Turner Hardcore. It's not quite punk in the traditional sense. I am kind of using the term somewhat loosely. It still leans into his anti-folk, pub rock type fare that he's kind of built as his signature sound over his career. And this is a pretty heavy record if you kind of get down to the nitty gritty and the bare bones of it all. There's topics of mental health, addiction, childhood trauma, mending relationships, and heartbreak. Most notably, a heartfelt tribute to the late Frightened Rabbits vocalist Scott Hutchinson, as well as there are 2 tracks that deal with his relationship with his father, who has transitioned into a woman named Miranda. But as an artist who has been using music as his therapeutic release, Frank Turner's still able to flesh out these difficult topics into these visceral riffs and roaring sing-along melodies. There's a lot of raw emotion and engaging, commanding energy on this record that it just makes it so easy to love. And he packs it all into these massive sing-along choruses and riff-heavy folk-punk song. And a couple of them even had me kind of going back for more, especially the track Punches. With an extremely loyal following behind him and having established himself as a very notable songwriter in the UK, Frank Turner doesn't stray too far off the course on this one with his signature sound. And longtime fans, if they haven't already, they're going to fall in love with Frank Turner even more with this record. There's a lot to get out of it and enjoy. And newcomers, I think, will be able to find some engaging and admirable qualities on this record. I'm going to give this album a 7 out of 10. Boston rapper Cousin Stizz has returned after a 2-year hiatus with his new album, Just For You. And I felt that this was a decent collection of contemporary hip-hop, focusing heavily on production and his playful rhythms. On the 13-track collection, Stizz quickly establishes a strong pace and presence, using his deep East Coast bravado to orchestrate industry-standard hip-hop that almost breaches the threshold of mainstream through his somewhat generic execution. At a solid 35 minutes, Just For You doesn't quite contribute much to the genre. The majority of the track list does kind of get lost in this pool of standardized hip-hop, predominantly from the standard trap beats and ad-lib lyricism. To paint you a picture, I felt that Just For You is the type of music you would hear at some trendy dive bar while the night's just about to pick up and you can't order a drink because the bartender's too busy flirting with the girls on the other end, and you're just sitting there kind of bouncing your head to just whatever's in the background. And I understand that Cousin Stizz does have a pretty solid discography behind him, and he has built a reputation for himself, and he's very good at what he does. But I felt this album falls comfortably into the category of basically pre-drink hip-hop. I'm going to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. Chicago-based, Dominican born and bred, hardcore 5-piece La Armada have put out their new album, Anti-Colonial Volume 2, which is the follow-up to the 2018 first chapter. So the band was originally formed in 2001 in Dominican Republic, and they eventually relocated to Chicago in 2008, and they've had a pretty consistent lineup since then. But for this new album, they ended up bringing in a new vocalist, Casper Torres, and it's actually shifted the band's sound ever so slightly into a more post-hardcore direction. Switching between English and Spanish, Anti-Colonial Volume 2 is just a ferocious record, regardless of language. And I felt that Casper Torres' searing screams makes way for the album's melodic and groovy guitar riffs, teetering between 90s hardcore and djent. I personally found that there was a lot of influence from Refuse, Propaganda, and especially At the Drive-In on this record. I felt that the band were keeping the unfiltered rawness of 90s post-hardcore at their heels while they navigated politics and society of today. And the main difference I felt between La Armada and their pioneers is their just relentless pacing on this album. The 11-track effort speeds by in the best way possible, leaving very, very little room for loss of momentum. Personally, I believe that La Armada are such an underrated group, especially now that Casper Torres has taken over at the helm, and I'm going to give this record an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you were able to discover some new music for this week to add to your library, and don't forget, head over to dustyorgan.com to discover more music on the regular. As well, I would love it if you could subscribe and like this video. And more loyal followers, you can head over to my Patreon or my shop. I've got all this sweet new merch available for you. All of those links are in the description. And most importantly, if you've discovered something you love, just share it around. It's that easy. Thanks for watching.